Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Health Hour organized by COLABS. This is the second episode, and here we'll be talking about mental well being and mental health. The previous episode was on fitness, so it was only necessary for us to talk about the mental well being as well if you want to talk about health. And I'm Noura Emmer. I'm a public health nutritionist, and I will be your host for this session. Um, First of all, thank you to COLABS for organizing this, and to all of you for taking time out and having to, spend this much amount of time in a situation like we are in right now, and making the effort to talk to us about this. Um, I would begin with formal introductions. First off, we have Ms. Shehi Naqvi with us on the panel. She's one of the founders of School of Leadership and Amwaj, and she is a trainer, a management consultant, and she's a senior associate at Carnelian. Ms. Geti, thank you for joining us. Sorry, Ms. Shehi, thank you for joining us. Next up, we have Ms. Geti. She's a psychodynamic psychotherapist who works with adolescents and adults with depression, anxiety, and PTSD. Thank you for joining us today. Last but obviously not the least, we have Ms. Jasmine Rana. She's a relational integrative psychotherapist and also a private practitioner in Lahore. She likes to focus on working with couples and adults. Thank you, Ms. Jasmine, for joining us today. So right now we have a few viewers, but we'll move on with the questions because I think this is a very pertinent topic, and the more we discuss it, the more it might help other people. So, first of all, I would like to begin with asking you, Ms. Shiri. Obviously, since you work in the training sector and you meet so many different people from different backgrounds, how do you think the current situation of this quarantine and this lockdown would sort of affect the motivation levels of people who are, although already working on minimal wages, and then somehow they have had to had cut downs in their salaries because the business wanted to sustain themselves?
Okay, I think we have a connection issue with Noor's end, right?
Yeah. Some glitch.
Yeah, okay. Maybe in a minute. Otherwise, okay, yeah, okay.
Did you get my question?
We just missed the last bit, I think. But yeah.
So I would just want to ask you, how do you think these people can keep themselves motivated and relate to, the fact that this is something that is global and not just related to them only? And how can they keep themselves motivated at work, at home, and sort of create the balance?
Thank you, Noor. The question is very vast. There are different strata of society, but I feel that there were three different phases of reaction. The first phase was, of course, the fight, flight, freeze reaction of our amygdala hijack, that what is happening over here in the world and what are we going to do? So that initial one was the stage of shock. Some people went into stress, some people didn't know how to do it. So they were, and within that bracket, there were, of course, those daily wagers, the middle tier, and the other ones who were running businesses. For example, I know people who are running bakeries. Their bakeries were shut down. All the inventory has gone to waste. There are beauty parlors. A friend of mine runs a spa.
Yeah.
She has to pay, 2 months of rent over 400,000 a month, and then 25 people staff salaries. So all those shocks are very much in there. Now, quickly, because we have been living with the digital world for so long, so people like ourselves, my organization, many companies stepped in to make the best use, because we've so long been talking about change is everything and you've got to be agile. We've been talking since decades about these concepts. So we stepped in. Many people just were agile enough to step in and rescue those, because there were a lot of misinformation coming in as well. Some people were suffering directly as well. So now we are somewhere in the middle of that phase. The curve that was coming down steeply has sort of tapered off. People are adjusting to a way of life. Remember that we used to spend a lot of money on petrol, spend a lot of
Petrol, yeah.
useless money on restaurants, on going out, on buying useless stuff. I tell you, the whole of Dolman Mall, all the shops over there, we don't need in our life anymore. The Gulf and all of the stores we have, all the bazaars selling kapra, the Pathano ka kapra and all, we don't need those anymore at all. We've realized that. So we're doing a lot of saving as well. Remember that. Then, the generosity of people. I myself have reached out to so many people on daily wages and giving them bags and bags full of rations and food and whatnot, making sure that our staff at the office, at homes, the full salaries are going, although we've all taken 50% cuts, but our PNs, cooks, all of them, my money is cut from them. So, and now we are that medium where we are adjusting to the new way of life, financially, economically, politically, socially, and then we'll have to just see. This bottom part can be very, very long. So let's
Yeah.
see how the long term will span out with the news that is coming up. China having coming out of it, Europe coming out of it. So let's see. Hopefully there is hope, and I'm sure Geti and Jasmine will enlighten us more on this.
I agree with you. I mean, it's hard to see the light when things feel so dark all around us, but having this positive perspective really helps. Ms. Jasmine, I would like to ask you next. One of the many problems that everybody else is facing right now is that there's just so much flow of information on the internet, and everybody is just bombarding you with news that you don't want to listen to, maybe, or you don't want to, see it. And it's increasing stress and anxiety levels. It's triggering that, right? So what would you suggest to people who would want to sort of contain the amount of information they get off the internet? One way would be to say, oh, don't use that much social media, but then people might also be using it as a way of relaxing or entertaining themselves, but then whenever they click on a story, everybody's just talking about corona. So what would you have to say about that?
So, I mean, this is sort of uncharted territory in the world, because what's happening is when we considered an excess of screen time unhealthy, now for the last 1 to 2 months, it's for some people been the only source of human interaction. So luckily here at least we still live with multiple people, but there are people around the world who just live in absolute isolation. And so the use of social media to a degree is actually quite healthy in this situation. But then we have a fine line between, well, how much is healthy and how much is really causing stress, anxiety, and all those other difficult feelings to strike. So one thing is really stressful influx of news, but I've actually noticed that people are still quite good at filtering the level of news that they hear or don't hear. They can still identify, okay, this is stressful. I'm going to limit my use of news time. But the one thing that they are doing a lot is not limiting screen time. And excess of screen time is correlated with a lot of difficult things, such as anxiety or sleeplessness, or when you check your phone at night, or just a low mood. And it's really about finding a routine that balances that out, so that you're not buried in your phone the whole day. And screen time is actually quite addictive. But what happens when you're locked down in a home? You don't have too much mobility, you don't have social interaction, you might not have your regular work. And what we do have access to is a lot of screens. So whether that's entertainment, that's some kind of work, that's social connection, that's the news. So I would say the fine line is really tapping in with, okay, how am I feeling? How am I doing right now? Am I experiencing a certain level of stress? Am I experiencing some kind of anxiety, some kind of uncertainty? And where can I tweak my life, my everyday life in the here and now to feel a little better? And screen time is one of those things. And just the last thing I'll say about screen time is screen time it gives us a sense of control to be updated with the news. So an excess of that might just be coming from a need to be in control during a time in the world where we have absolutely no control, they're kind of unprecedented circumstances. So if it's specifically the news that you find yourself obsessing over, checking every hour, you might want to reflect on your need as an individual to be in control.
I agree with you on that. And just it's interesting that you brought up the amount of screen time and the adverse effects it has on your health. And I would extend that and ask Miss Katie, since you work with adolescents, I think you'd be the right person to ask this. I myself have a 13-year-old sister, and this is something I've seen in every household. The amount of screen time that teenagers these days have is going out of the roof, right? And to make them understand that it's bad for their health is a war in itself. And considering now that school is over and then they don't have much else to do, they can't go out, they can't play in, outdoors, they can't meet their cousins, their friends, they can't do any activity outside the house. So in such times, their screen time has increased even more, right? And if they're fasting, they'll be like, well, what do? We have nothing to do, or we can just eat, but right now we're not even doing that. So, what would you suggest to this percentage of adolescents and their parents on how to sort of create that balance and how to communicate with these adolescents and tell them that this is affecting their mental health? How to make them understand that?
So I think a really important question to ask here is what purpose screen time is serving for adolescents who are in self isolation right now with their families. So teens do
I would
have
guarantee
this
a large percentage is just Netflix.
right. So teenage is a time in our lives when we're going through a lot of rapid change, and one space to kind of explore ourselves during teenage is our social relationships, and that kind of helps teenage develop a sense of where they fit into society, and who they are in terms of what their interests are, what career aspirations they might have, what they're interested in studying, etc. Because they're trying to figure that out during this period of
Yeah.
their lives, right? So, in the absence of being able to meet their friends, or being able to go to school like they were going earlier, and having a robust social life, which could be really helpful during teenage, there might be a lot of feelings of frustration or boredom or loneliness, and so in my opinion, a lot of the times screen time or technology is a way to regulate those difficult feelings of boredom, frustration, and loneliness, and it can also serve as a distraction from those feelings, and it can be used maybe as a substitute for connection, even if it doesn't fully serve that purpose, but it kind of provides a buffer from really experiencing those feelings. And so maybe something to consider here is to for the adults in the house who have teenagers at home, something to consider for them is how they can build connection with the teenagers, how they can open lines of communication where the adolescents can talk about how they're feeling, or even if it's something hard to talk about, even if it's something vulnerable, I think that can create a lot of bridges within the family network and at this time, and also to help them explore themselves in other ways, like maybe suggesting activities, or and helping them channel their curiosity at home using resources they have, like maybe there's some skills they could potentially acquire, like maybe cooking, or maybe collage making, or whatever might interest them. So this is a time to kind of help them explore themselves. And also something else that I want to add, one last thing, is that adolescents are also not adults, so they're still developing, right? So they're still dependent on their caregivers to quite a large extent. So I think that comes with a certain responsibility for adults to kind of guide them or just be available for them. They need to talk about themselves, or if they're or just to bond. Like the adults, I think, have to take the first step. They have to take the initiative in building connection with the adolescents so that they can feel heard and seen, right?
Yeah, yeah, and
That's a very
I
beautiful.
completely agree with that. Just that last point about the adults, I want to say, okay, it's really the adults who set the tone about how they channel their stress or anxiety or their relationship with lack of control, through which all the dependents actually experience their own feelings about it. So that's something to be really mindful of.
Lack of control, honestly, this is very interesting because lack of control in an adolescent is, I think, a very big issue that they face because they think they're independent and then they can do everything on their own, but they're repeatedly told that they need, support. So it's
Yeah.
interesting that you pointed that out. Michelle, since you've worked with a lot of youth, would you like to add something to this? Uh, would you have any, suggestions or any comments on that? Sorry, Michelle, you're on mute, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
When I see children, whether it's my grandchildren or when I'm sitting at the airport, I'm sitting there. So little children are on their tablets, whether it's Corona or not. It doesn't matter. This is an escape. This is an escape because the parents are not creative enough to do something with the kids. We have not learned how to be creative as parents. Parenting requires a lot of creativity. We are going along with the old lessons of our parents and their parents. इसको मैं कहती हूँ उधार सोच चल रही है, उधार पे चल रही है और कोई पूछ नहीं रहा कि भाई is there an alternative? So वो बच्चा कोई कहीं जाने लगता है, हम कहते हैं ओए उधर मत जाओ, चोट लग जाएगी, गंदे हो जाओगे, टूट जाएगा. अब the whole future. We already tell him the whole future and it is the worst future ever. फिर वो बच्चा इधर जाता है और वो उसको वहां डरा के बहू है, वो सीढ़ी चढ़ता है, ऊपर बहू है. अच्छा वो उसके अंदर ऐसा हम 2 साल, अच्छा अब क्रॉलिंग एज का बच्चा होता है 8-9 महीने का, उसके अंदर ऐसा बहू बिठा देते हैं ना, और फिर हम कहते हैं जी हार्वर्ड भी जाओ तो लम्स भी जाओ तो पता नहीं, ताकि वो कोई और लोग आके उस बहू को निकालें. अब वो का सबसे बेस्ट एस्केप क्या है कि और कोई ना हो, सिर्फ उसके साथ उसका स्क्रीन हो और कोई जजमेंट ना करे उस पे. अब वो माँ बाप जो है ना, लाइक आप लोग सारे काउंसलर्स आर वेरी गुड एट स्टडीइंग और प्रैक्टिसिंग ट्रांजैक्शनल एनालिसिस. So what are we projecting in our relationships? What are we projecting? We are projecting those bows. And how does it come out? When I say, oh नूर तुम्हें पता है जैस्मिन ने कल क्या पहना था, हाँ कितनी अजीब लग रही थी ना. So I got control now. My self-esteem goes up in these very horrible ways because all my life I'm an adaptive child. I've been judged all the time. I've been told that I can't do anything. So my integrity is no more in my hands. I have developed patterns in my young life where I'm hanging on to pieces all the time. Although my conscientiousness says, I know what is true, what is right, what is wrong. I'm born with it. All of us are born with who likes to be lied to? Who likes to be disrespected? Who likes to be mistrusted? Nobody likes that. So those norms we are born with. So the child knows that. But there is so much conflict going on that it's a battered childhood. We are already, and I'm surprised with all this baggage, people grow up in our society and we come to the corporate world and we do pretty well in the world, because mashallah, we are very, very intelligent people. So we manage to cope. It's always coping. That's why the word sustainability is so popular. Why talk about sustainability? Why not talk about thriving, about taking a rocket and going to Mars or something? No, it's always our plate, bus, we can fill the gutters all the time. but we're not talking about how to fill the factories and build new cover, traverse new oceans, and there's no talk of the dreams that is going on.
So,
That's
I mean, that makes me think of two really important points right now for parents, which is that it might be just such an easier option to put your children onto the screen right now because you're cooped up at home, and it would take a lot of creativity about how to not fall into that. So that's important. And then the other thing about these, you know, children who struggle to grow up and do really well in corporations is that a lot of that is because we are so greatly adaptive, and that's what a lot of corporations require. So this is a really creative time in the world where the corporate infrastructure, as we knew it, temporarily, at least for now, has collapsed. So it can also give birth to a lot of creativity.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I totally agree with that.
I'll give you an example. When my grandchildren come from Dubai for the summer, so I have a project. They stay here for a month and a half. I design projects that will last them that long. For example, I bought simple cotton t-shirts. I bought t-shirts of different sizes of the people in the family. Now, my granddaughter, who's 7 years old, I gave her a notebook and a pen. I said, now write on every second page, write a name of your dadi, nani, nana, and a khala, khalu, mamu. You write the name of these people. And now every day you will, not every day, but it takes so long for purpose. So once a week you go, let's say you go to the khala and you interview her. You interview her on khala, what is your favorite scene? Describe your favorite scene. So she describes the beach and the mountains, and so the child is drawing in the or making notes because at 7 they can start a bit of writing. Then I say, what is the favorite thought? What is the thought that makes your khala go crazy and happy? So different 3, 4 questions. Now they bring the material, and then I've just got these simple paints and this white t-shirt, and this child has to paint the scene on the t-shirt and the quotation at the back with the little logo design. So there's so much creativity, there's so much time going into it. And then we iron it together and we wrap it up nicely and we give it to a present to the khala. So the whole week is gone with one person's interview, and the child has created something. You know, the amount of sense of achievement that has come in, the confidence that you're building, the high self-esteem that is coming in. Then another one is that I make a map of my house, upstairs and downstairs. So I make a map, and then I give them clues. So on my phone, for example, there is, now this is not screen time, all right? This is using a compass. There is a compass which shows east, west, north, south, and I hide a treasure somewhere in the house. So the treasure could be a rubber, pencil, a pony, rubber band, whatever, right? Now on that map, I give them a chit and I write east, west, north, south, how many steps turn, so many degrees left, then take 3 steps, so many degrees west, and so on. And they arrive through that maze on that gift. They bring the pencil, and then on the map, they have to mark which was the location which they read with these coordinates, the longitudes, the latitude. So they're getting spatial directions. They're becoming adventurers. Simple things like that. But it takes time to think and to come up, and simple materials.
Creativity.
Yeah. And I think a lot of old school type of thinking for homeschooling, which is all based on creativity and using your space and things that I think we didn't grow up with, and that our parents have probably not grown up with. So forgotten skills of how to just learn when you're teaching your child at home with limited people and limited tools, that can be really valuable.
Yeah. And so something that came to my mind when I was hearing Miss Chiri speak a couple of minutes ago was about projection and about how there are certain patterns of behavior that get passed on intergenerationally. So like I work with adolescents and adults, and there in some family systems there might be criticism or some kind of shaming or fear inducing that might occur just verbally or even non-verbally might be communicated as the norm of like how to be. And so like even as Ms. Chi was saying, we're all inherently creative and curious and compassionate, and we learn through play, and we learn through self-expression. And so behaviors such as blaming or shaming might limit and might create these beliefs, which then inhibit our ability to express ourselves, and also and then subsequently to grow. And so I think this self-isolation is also an opportunity for grown-ups, for adults, to self-reflect and to kind of maybe unpack what their wounds are, and how they might have kind of inherited certain fears and beliefs which have affected them, which have limited them in their lives, and then they might also be passing on to the children and adolescents at home. And so and to just ask themselves how they can create more openness and acceptance, and for themselves and for other members of the household, and how they can start to approach themselves and others with curiosity as opposed to criticism.
And I completely agree with Geethi. This is the best time to do it, because when we're actually in a lockdown, our family dynamics are really highlighted. So the regular escapes of like work and school and socializing are limited. And so then we really notice, okay, how do we feel in our home space? How do I feel if I'm alone? How do I feel if I'm the child, or as a parent, or as a spouse? And then that can get us really reflecting on what we're talking about, which is what we're carrying within, and all this transgenerational stuff that's handed down.
Yeah.
That's really insightful, and I'm so grateful for your input. But you guys talked about family dynamics and family systems, and I just noted that down because this is what I want to talk about as well. I feel like, okay, so if you belong to a loving and caring household, this is one thing that can happen, right? But the other thing is, people, since now in a lockdown, might also be stuck with toxicity. In the family system or in the household, which might be adversely affecting their mental well-being. So, Miss Jasmine, what would you say could be a way to deal with this toxicity, or how to channelize your energies towards positivity when you know that the family dynamics you're living with are not the most ideal, if I may say so?
Okay. I think Noor got stuck. Yeah. Okay. So, and Shirin, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, I'll answer a tiny bit of what I think Noor asked, because she got she froze in the middle, and then you guys can add on. But their abuse rates are skyrocketing everywhere in the world right now. So that was something I think right when the pandemic hit, it was sort of overlooked until suddenly, by overlooked, I mean, it wasn't forecasted. And suddenly cities around the world, they started reporting that the numbers of the hotline have skyrocketed, shelters being approached were skyrocketing. So we had to think about why. And one of the things with abuse is that wherever there are abusive tendencies, and what I think Noor is calling toxic, is they're usually fueled by the need to control and some kind of inner insecurity. So when we put something like a pandemic out there, we're actually saying, okay, now you have financial insecurity, you have health insecurity, you don't have a control over how, the next few months, the rest of your life, dependent on these next few months, might play out. So people with abusive tendencies are probably going to lash out. And then there's studies that show that if you, abusers are much more likely to even kill their spouse if they're acting out of an external pressure. So the pandemic is really an external pressure. So really we're looking at a series of triggers that could make abuse worse in a complete social lockdown.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay. I don't know if anyone wants to add on, but where we missed the last part of your question before you froze out, and then I just had abuse in the pandemic.
I was just generally asking, how would you suggest these people to channelize this toxicity or these stresses towards positivity? And I think you've pretty much sort of answered that. But if there's anything
So
else you would like to add, you can.
Well, yeah, I'll quickly just add one or two things, and then Gaby and Shireen can add in if they want. Is I just spoke about abuse and why it's really explosive right now. I don't like to speak about how to cope with abuse because it's almost endorsing abuse. So I'm going to draw a fine line and say, how do we cope with really, really difficult dynamics in the home? And
Well,
that
not
is by
necessarily abuse, I would say. Just particular,
okay.
Just toxicity inside the household. I wouldn't like to, say that you have to cope with abuse, but obviously that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, I get it. No, but I just wanted to clarify that I don't. There's a lot of rhetoric here in Pakistan that says, "Acha chalo, kama ke to lata hai, ye to karta hai, wo to karta hai, ye sharab to nahi pita." That basically endorses abuse, and I feel like that keeps us trapped in a cycle. So I just wanted to say that no, I'm not endorsing abuse, but I'm saying we might be stuck at home with really, really difficult dynamics. So we want to look at external and internal boundaries. So external boundaries would be like having a room where you feel safe, setting some time that's for yourself. And internal boundaries would be something like, even if I'm surrounded by people, can I make enough emotional space for myself without being consumed by someone else's mood or someone else's stress or someone else's anxiety? So these are all things to consider when you're trying to cope in a difficult home space.
Yeah.
That's very useful. If you guys have something to add to that, we can take that.
Sure. Something that I'd like to add is that in toxic dynamics or just unhealthy interpersonal dynamics, I think sometimes what ends up happening is that the person who's on, let's say, a victim in that situation, or somebody whose needs are being neglected, or they might their personal space might be intruded upon, then a lot of the times it's hard for them to validate that something unfair is happening. They might feel a lot of fear, or they might feel cut off from their anger. It might feel unsafe to assert themselves. So I think something that I would suggest is really, if somebody is in that situation, for them to really take a moment and just validate when they feel irritation, or when they feel like something is off about, or my needs aren't being met, or maybe a boundary is being violated, then really just validating that for themselves, and then maybe just figuring out a way to express that uh, um, express that to the other person in a way that's clear and direct, and also potentially tell the other person what they can do differently. And also focusing on self-care, like maybe like Jasmine was saying, taking some space for yourself, figuring out what a safe space is for you, or even just sitting down and visualizing what a safe space in this universe would look like, what it would smell like, what you would hear there, what you would taste over there. Just kind of using all your senses to visualize a safe space, and trying to imagine being there, so that you feel safe in your own body. And then maybe finding a physical space, like a room in the house where you feel safe, and where you can just have some time for yourself, and where you can reflect on what you're feeling, and maybe you
These
can
are pretty useful interventions.
you can maybe identify which needs are going unmet, and how you can kind of meet them. So I mean, and also just kind of looking at the messages that their emotions are giving them. Emotion, and I'm talking particularly here about emotions such as annoyance, frustration, irritation, sadness, right? What messages they have for the person who's experiencing them.
Right. If I could add to that, Yasmin said very
Sure,
nicely
why
that
not?
we need to look at the why. Now, I'm reading these days the psychologist philosopher of the 20th century, Eric Fromm, and he defines our growth over time, especially in he was born in 1900 till 1980. So he looks at capitalism when the industrial revolution started, and we became like cogs in a wheel, just everybody going to the factory, putting up the cork on a bottle all the time for 10 hours on the assembly lines. So the individuality, they were holding on to the individuality, but it kind of faded away into being you have to be a collective, be in harmony and all of that. And then the consumerism that started with capitalism. Even now, look back just a month ago, how the shops are always full and how we are spending, talking about, oh, I'm such a foodie. We talk with the kind of language that we are using. We are always consuming. Now, when such a people becomes very soft, such people are very soft. The character starts shriveling. The spirit starts shriveling. And when there is inside, when there is hollowness, then there is fear of implosion. Yeah. Now, this is what consumerism is playing on our minds. I must have this, otherwise I'm nobody. My phone must be of this standard, otherwise I'm not part of the gang or whatever. Now, this is how our security. Now, look at the Facebook phenomena. People keep putting up selfies and pictures and profile pictures so that they get a like. Every like gives them a boost.
Instant gratification,
Yeah, from external sources. So the more we are becoming dependent on external sources, the more the soul shrivels, because we are hanging on to something that's not in our control. The outside is not in my control. So my solution to the toxicity that happens, I think Geeti said very nicely, is going back to your child, which is being curious, being compassionate, and being creative, the 3 C's. Instead of being the adult, not the adult, but the parent who's being always critical and judgmental. Yeah. Now, for me, body comes much later. Now, the anger and the toxicity is part of how the body, the hormones all operate within us. And with it come emotions. Emotions trigger all these hormones and the toxicness that is within me. But I feel if we go to the a priori, the first baseline on which because of all the capitalism and the consumerism we've lost sight of, is our spirituality. I feel if the spirit is strong, the body doesn't get sick. And no matter what difficult environment you fall into, you're never toxic at all. It doesn't happen.
That's a very beautiful thought.
Yeah. So your spirituality feeds on, like my stomach needs food, my brain needs knowledge, my spirit needs virtue. The food for my spirit are 2, virtue and nobility. That's the food of my soul. And compassion is not just sympathy or empathy. Compassion is with action, common in passion. Now, if we practice kindness, then the spirit raises itself. Just smiling at somebody, saying kind, being listening to them, showing respect. But Geeti, you again said earlier, we need more openness in the society. Now, that is such a big thing, you said, what the ramifications are and what the causes are of that. You are talking about trust. You cannot be open with somebody you do not trust. This society is a mistrusting society.
Yeah.
And the first the mistrust is because I mistrust myself. Again, Geeti, you used words like shame, blame. I mean, we are all not wearing dupattas right now, but this dupatta is a symbol of shame. And when I go to Wikipedia and look up the definition of shame, you will be surprised what it says. It opened my eyes. The definition is a conscious state of humiliation. Conscious state. I'm always conscious of being a source of humiliation. So every girl in my society walks a little bent because she's conscious of her chest. She's not allowed to smile, which is compassion. She's not allowed to be kind because it may be construed that, oh, she's coming on tough on me, you know. I'm embarrassed with my hair, so I have to cover it. I'm ashamed of my hair, of something I feel good about. My crowning glory is my hair, and I'm supposed to be ashamed of that. So the spirit is shriveling because of, and a little bit of kapda, 3 gaz ka kapda covers my head. So it goes from the abstract. The soul is abstract. It goes into the concrete, which is a 3 gaz ka kapda. Yeah. And whenever you put things intangible, when you put the matters of the soul into tangible items, that's where the civilization comes to an end. Every civilization has died when you come to the physical part of the being and forget the spiritual part of it.
That's really powerful stuff you just said.
That's really nice. And yeah. And it's also that I feel like even though we're making a slight progress, there's still light years we have to move before we can actually call ourselves a society that is open to such discussions, I would say. Another thing that I've felt in my house and in everybody's house that I've talked to about, and I think this is something you guys will also be facing in yours, and maybe sharing your experiences would help the audience. So the thing is now, since the basic most basic human interaction of touch has sort of inculcated the fear in you, right? So you go out, you're wearing a mask, you're wearing gloves, you have a sanitizer with you. If you're even more paranoid, you will be spraying your car seat, and before you even reach out to touch anything, you will be in constant fear, and it has sort of burdened your brain to a level that you come home, then you wash all the things, and then you keep them aside for a few hours or even days before anybody can touch it, right? So this whole new routine or the new normal that we've adapted, how do you think it can sort of affect the basic human brain? Also, how do you think the spillover effects will be once, inshallah, this is over? What will be the spillover effects of it? So, Ms. Jasmine, would you like to go first?
Sure. Sorry, my internet dropped out in the middle, so I missed a little bit. But I'll just answer this question by picking up with this one thing Ms. Shireen was talking about, which is how we are emerging from the Industrial Revolution. So all these 9 to 5 jobs, like why does this concept even exist? It's all just like the shadow of the Industrial Revolution that we operate in. And now suddenly the world has paused, and I think the internet has actually provided this amazing tool for so many people. Okay, you can be in charge of your own life creatively. And it actually does allow that to a certain degree to some people to set their own work timings, their own work hours, at their own schedule. This is all in opposition to the Industrial Revolution. So we're slowly emerging. And then there's the dark side of that, which is what you are talking about, Noor, which is like, okay, suddenly the whole world is operating with technology, and at the same time, we're scared of human interaction. So these things together, it's really difficult. What I'll say is, we've been through this before in civilizations. You know, we've been through this with the Spanish flu. We've been through this with the plague. They were prolonged periods of pandemics where people were afraid of highly infectious diseases, maybe not as aware or educated about it as we are now, but we still came out of it, even if it was long term. So I like to have some faith that, okay, even if this spills over for a year or two, we won't struggle to go back into that kind of human interaction. I'm sure it will have some impact. But one of the other really interesting things for me during this time is, especially in our part of the world where we're in a lockdown with families, is that our intimate human interactions are super intense, and our external human interactions are completely almost null until the lockdown ease up. And that's something most of us haven't experienced, where we're really either with ourselves, which is a very important relationship we have, or with our spouse or kids or parents, and we're looking at the intimate parts of our soul. So, tying in with some of the spirituality that I caught on, it's actually potentially quite a time to use for spiritual awakening, to really look at the intimate parts of your life.
Yeah.
Any one of you would like to add, Miss
Yeah,
Jyoti or Miss Shane?
I'm very high on touch. I'm a very touch person. So everybody I see, I just go and give them a big jappi, and I give mwah, mwah, mwah. I do a lot of kissing and hugging with everybody. I mean, I go to conferences, my youth conferences. I've got these 300, and I go around kissing and hugging them every day. So I miss that very much. I feel deprived. I feel cheated. I guess I'm now bombarding my husband with all the the energy of kissing and hugging. I'm overdoing it with my husband and my two dogs as well, because dogs don't get corona. Yeah, but the people who, like my friends, occasionally we cheat and we meet each other. My friends from Canade College, so we all, they try and stay away, but I go and hug them. I think it is also a good way of reducing the world population. I think the more fear of human contact, the lesser the population will get. It's another way of seeing how the earth is going to save itself.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, unless there are a lot of spouses at home procreating, but yeah, I think it's definitely a good way to reduce STDs around the world right now.
Yeah. And something that I want to kind of add is something that Jasmine touched upon, the relationship with ourselves, which is a really important relationship. And so with this, lack of access to other people that we could, hug and kiss, I think, and I don't know how this will sound, but I think this is also an opportunity to just be present with ourselves more. Like, I often find that I end up massaging my shoulders or just kind of giving myself a hug from time to time when I'm really, really missing, my friends maybe who I could have hugged. I recognize that, okay, this is something I'm missing and it's something I need. So how can I meet that need for myself? And so just trying to kind of get physically closer to myself, and even over the phone, whatever limited contact I can have with people that I am close to, I'm trying to utilize that time to connect with them more intimately than I would have before. Maybe spending less time on small talk or just discussions about general topics, and more conversations about myself or them and us, and how we're feeling, what we're experiencing, being more present with the people that I can access over the phone, and be feeling more grateful for that now. I think a lot of the time I maybe took for granted the physical presence of my friends around me, and now I have this new sort of appreciation and gratitude for it.
So that's exactly what I've been feeling, and I've been seeing a lot of it on social media as well. A lot of my friends, the rants that they used to put up, oh, I'm so tired of going to office, what is this driving all the time, and then they're just resharing their captions, and they're saying, I'm so sorry, please give me my life back. People are realizing the importance all those things had in their life, and it's a really nice time to sort of realize those little things that you did not give any value are somehow so much more important right now.
And I think in some ways, other than major social media platforms, this is happening. What Gayathi's talking about, a lot of intimacy is also emerging, where you are not going to social gatherings, but the people who you're seeking out to take the time out to have those calls with, or the people in a more eased lockdown who you are choosing to meet cautiously, are just the people you're intimately involved with. And then those
Yeah.
intimate relationships are actually being grown and given attention to. And me personally, I have two small kids, so I'm also experiencing a lot of gratitude. This is probably the only time this is going to happen in the world, and maybe in their lifetime. And I don't know what's going to happen after. I mean, I know how my life was before, but how can I fully make use of this experience just being in the house with them, even if it's limiting? It's something that I feel really grateful for, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
completely agree with that. Yeah. But having said that, I feel like there's also this narrative where everybody you see is sort of trying to make the most of this time. But then a lot of people out there are also sort of telling you to take it easy and not feel pressurized by how productive everybody else around you is. Or you don't necessarily have to, learn a new skill or be cooking, something or be baking. You can just, relax. Don't even I've also heard people say you don't even need to worry about like your diet or whatever. Just do whatever helps you cope with the anxiety that a pandemic can cause. Um,
Mm.
Miss Shiri, what would you say on that? The fact that there are these two completely conflicting views out there on the internet right now. One is that this is the best time to be productive, and the other is that no, you just need to relax. It's okay if you can't do anything.
It's very simple. Why would it happen to you? Why are you torn between these two voices? Is because if you don't have a direction, only then you would be torn. Find a direction, get down into. I feel very, very fulfilled with doing my work, learning new
Hmm.
skills, growing myself, challenging, self
Hmm.
destructing all the old habits that where we
Hmm.
were clinging on to. I just love that destructive phase that I'm going through, and but if I have nothing to look forward to, then will have anxiety. Anxiety is good, by the way. Anxiety is not something bad. There are stresses also. Levels of stress are good. Anxiety, the word has a touch of eagerness in it. It's got enthusiasm in it. It's got life in it. Yeah, so anxiety is good. Please feel it. Don't fight it. If you fight something, you will just bash yourself against it. Accept it. Listen to your voice. Listen to your emotions. Don't fight them. The more you fight them, वो कहते हैं ना कि अगर मच्छर ने काटा and you keep scratching it, it'll become a wound. Don't scratch the itch. Just accept it and find the antidote and move on with it. And yeah, मैं कहती हूँ सुनो सबकी करो अपनी, लेकिन अगर अपना करने को है ही नहीं तो फिर सुनने सब में ही लगे रहेंगे और कुछ फायदा नहीं होगा.
Yeah.
And we're also one of the things I think that happens maybe even with the younger people is that these social media platforms are like little high schools. Everyone's in charge of being the editor for their own magazine. That's their own page, and it creates a lot of competitiveness, which creates a lot of stress. I mean, gone are the days where you just speak on the phone after every few days or meet every so often and talk about what you did. But now I think that is something that really adds to anxiety for people in terms of what is everyone else doing with this time, because we've been so conditioned with productivity. And then when we say other people are using this time, whether it's for meditation, whether it's for cooking, whether it's for work, it adds an element of stress. And in my opinion, this is one of the negative impacts of social media, but it comes with the package.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And I think, when we're thinking of like acquiring new skills and being productive
Yeah.
and trying to like complete this to-do list, a really important question to ask ourselves is, where is the need to do all of this coming from? Like, is it coming from this desire for or an interest, a genuine interest in doing these things, and a desire to accomplish these things because they resonate with me and they're going to help me grow? Or is this coming from this uh, or is this coming from my perception of what other people think about me,
Yes, trying to
or
please the
trying to
society,
please others,
perhaps.
or in
Yeah.
comparison to if what an XYZ person is doing? And so that's a really important thing to distinguish. Because you know, if we're trying to do something to please other people, then that might come at a cost of our own satisfaction
Yeah.
with ourselves and just overall. And although, like, if we do something because it actually piques our interest and it really you know, stimulates us, then I mean that can be really helpful, right?
Yes. Thank you, guys. All of this has been really helpful, and I appreciate all the input that you've given into this. I personally have learned a lot, and I hope that all the people that are watching us have too.
And thank you,
So,
Noor. You were a wonderful facilitator, and your questions were absolutely brilliant.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
So,
you. This was very exciting.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
it
you
was.
so much.
I really liked being here and just
I
listening.
enjoyed
and
talking to you guys. Honestly, it was so fulfilling. Like, I'm so glad we had this conversation. And I'm just going to go downstairs and show this to my sister and be like, we have a lot of things to talk about now. So, thank you for joining us today. So, this is the end of this session, which is the second episode. All the viewers, you can just tune in next week for our third episode. Thank you to COLABS for organizing this, and for to all of you for taking time out to join us. It's
Thank
been a
you.
pleasure. Thank you.
Welcome.
Jasmine,
Thank
good
you
to
for
get to know
having
you.
us.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Thank you.
Take care.